General Hospital will reveal characters coming and going unexpectedly this week. Tamara Braun's long and winding journey through General Hospital has left a deep mark on the series, both as a legacy and as a symbol of evolution. Her return to the canvas is never ordinary. It brings with it the weight of history, unresolved grief, and the potential to shake up Port Charles in ways few characters can. As the second actress to portray Carly, she stepped into impossibly large shoes in 2002 when Sarah Joy Brown departed, and she didn't just fill the role, she redefined it. Tamara's portrayal of Carly was fierce, emotionally raw, and unforgettable. But her exit in 2005 didn't mark the end of her GH legacy, it was merely the end of the first act. 12 years later, in 2017, Tamara made a bold return, not as Carly, but as an entirely new character, Dr. Kim Nero. And unlike many reintroductions of past actors, this wasn't a simple stunt. Kim was layered, grounded in tragedy, and had a mysterious past that unfolded slowly. She arrived in Port Charles as the devoted mother of Oscar, a sweet and hopeful young man who fell in love with Josslyn Jacks. Their teen romance was charming and innocent, but the storyline was never meant to last. The devastating reveal that Oscar was terminally ill with cancer changed everything, for both the characters and the viewers. It wasn't just about a young boy's battle with a cruel disease, it was about watching a mother fall apart while trying to hold herself together. The added twist, that Oscar's father was Drew Kane, Jason Morgan's long-lost twin, only deepened the emotional complexity. At the time, Drew was portrayed by the late Billy Miller, whose chemistry with Tamara helped build a believable, broken family dynamic. Together, they delivered one of the show's most heartbreaking arcs, grieving parents watching their child slip away, unable to save him. It was gut-wrenching, and Tamara brought every ounce of pain, vulnerability, and desperation to life. But Kim's story didn't end with Oscar's death. In many ways, it had only just begun. Grief twisted her, reshaped her, and ultimately consumed her. Her relationship with Julian Jerome, already on fragile ground, began to unravel. Desperate to recreate what she'd lost, she became obsessed with having another child. This desire drove her to the brink of obsession, and when Franco, now carrying Drew's memories due to a bizarre memory mapping experiment, entered the picture, Kim spiraled. She convinced herself that Franco, now thinking like Drew, could be the man she once loved. What followed was a dark and uncomfortable period of manipulation and detachment from reality. Kim became a shadow of her former self, driven not by hope, but by the lingering echoes of a son she couldn't let go. Eventually, Kim left Port Charles in disgrace and sorrow. It was a quiet exit, but one that left more questions than answers. The biggest came a year later, when Julian tracked her down to an apartment in New York. There, he found a nanny and a young child named Andy, Kim's son. Kim herself was nowhere to be found. In a cryptic phone call, the nanny referred to Julian as the baby's father, setting off a chain of implications that have never fully been resolved. Did Kim and Julian conceive Andy before her departure? Or was there someone else? Now, the landscape of Port Charles is very different. Julian is dead. Drew is back, portrayed now by Cameron Matheson, and he is nothing like the man Kim once loved. He has traded vulnerability for ambition, humility for arrogance. He's become a congressman, but not one who serves the people. Instead, he's hungry for power and is quickly becoming one of the most despised figures in town. He's seduced the wife of his own nephew and is ruthlessly cutting down anyone who stands in his way. The warm-hearted father who once mourned Oscar with quiet dignity is gone, replaced by a calculating force of ego and self-preservation. And this makes it the perfect time for Kim Nero to return. There's no one better equipped to confront Drew than the woman who once knew him before he lost himself. Kim is not just Oscar's mother, she is a living reminder of Drew's humanity, of the life he once cherished and the son he swore to protect. Her return could force Drew to face the consequences of his transformation. She could come to him as a mirror, one that reflects the ugliness he's grown into. Or she could be something more dangerous, a woman on a mission, determined to dismantle the empire he's built atop the ruins of their shared past. And what if Andy isn't Julian's son? What if, during that emotionally volatile period after Oscar's death, Kim and Drew conceived a child, unknowingly, or perhaps as a desperate attempt to reconnect? The revelation that Drew could be Andy's father would turn his world upside down. It would jeopardize his political career, disrupt his current relationship with Willow, and force him to reckon with a part of himself he's tried to bury under ambition. There's also the question of love. Could Drew still care for Kim? Could the memory of what they shared, however painful, ignite something new? Or will Kim return not with hope, but with rage? A woman who has suffered loss, endured betrayal, and now sees the man she once trusted become everything she despises? Tamara Braun's return as Dr. Kim Nero wouldn't just revive a forgotten thread, it would inject General Hospital with long overdue emotional reckoning. She brings history. She brings complexity. She brings unfinished business. And in a town where no secret stays buried and no one truly leaves forever, Kim Nero's reappearance might just be the reckoning Port Charles doesn't know it needs. Because sometimes, the ghosts of the past don't come back to haunt, they come back to destroy. Danny's return during a week filled with tension in Port Charles was more than just a visit home, it marked the beginning of a new chapter for long-buried secrets that had quietly haunted the town. For years, Danny had lived in the shadow of his parents, Jason and Sam, whose turbulent past was riddled with life-and-death struggles, impossible choices, and irreversible losses. But Danny was no longer the quiet boy who listened without question. He returned with sharper eyes, a weathered heart, and, above all, a desire to uncover the truth that had always been kept from him. From the moment he stepped into General Hospital, Danny noticed the shift in how those around him looked at him. They no longer treated him as a child protected from adult matters, but rather as a threat, someone who might stumble upon a truth they had worked hard to keep hidden. His encounter with Sasha was no exception. Sasha, a woman he once admired from afar for her strength in the face of grief, the loss of Brando, the heartbreak of losing her child, now stood before him, pregnant, and seemingly caught in a web of half-truths. When Danny casually brought up the paternity of her unborn child, his voice held more than idle curiosity. There was an underlying sharpness to his tone, as if he were testing the waters, watching for her reaction. Sasha, weary of the unspoken questions that surrounded her pregnancy, suddenly found herself caught off guard. Danny's statement, that he'd heard Jason wasn't the father, struck like lightning. Whether it was a guess or something he had overheard, it forced Sasha into uncomfortable silence. The air around them grew heavy, thick with the unspoken. For those who've lived long enough in the shadow of secrets, even a passing comment can unravel the careful facade they've built. Sasha felt the weight of every lie she'd told, every truth she'd concealed. And now, staring into the eyes of someone too perceptive for his age, she realized the risk wasn't just public exposure, it was personal collapse. Elsewhere in Port Charles, Vaughn, an enigmatic figure tied to the inner workings of the WSB, was silently watching. His face was emotionless, his gaze unreadable, and his presence unsettling. Vaughn wasn't new to the shadows. He had once been a handler of classified missions, a ghost behind the most dangerous operations. Now, he walked the hospital corridors not with a badge, but with purpose. Rumors swirled. Some said he was investigating an old case, others believed he had a vendetta against Jason linked to a botched Eastern European mission that cost WSB lives. But the truth, far more dangerous, was that Vaughn was gathering information. And anyone connected to Jason, including Danny, could become a pawn in a far-reaching game of retribution. When Vaughn overheard the conversation between Danny and Sasha, a smirk briefly crossed his lips. He recognized something important in Danny's words. Not only had the boy possibly stumbled upon a secret Jason himself might not know, but Vaughn also saw in Danny the potential to dismantle everything Jason had fought to protect. No one knew what Vaughn intended to do with the knowledge he collected, but his presence was like a silent storm front moving in, cold, calculated, and unstoppable. And when that storm broke, no one, Jason, Sasha, or Danny, would be spared. As the day faded and darkness settled over the quiet halls of General Hospital, Danny stood alone at a high window, watching the night fall over his hometown. In his eyes was a war between protection and exposure, between shielding those he loved and uncovering the lies that shaped his past. His return was more than just another chapter in Port Charles, it was a silent warning: secrets, once disturbed, never sleep again. The WSB drama in Port Charles continues to unfold with bold developments and the unexpected involvement of younger characters. This time, it's Josslyn, once seen as a symbol of youth and vitality, now stepping into a world of shadows and schemes. In the episode airing on April 10th, she appears alongside Vaughn, a man suspected of either working for or against the WSB, his true allegiance still unclear. Their meeting isn't a random coincidence but seems like a deliberate move by a hidden force attempting to draw Joss into a game far more dangerous than anything she's encountered as a college student or as Carly's daughter. Their first interaction doesn't immediately scream romance, yet the chemistry between Vaughn and Joss is undeniable. Vaughn, with his cool demeanor and deep, measured voice, naturally commands attention, and Joss is no exception. She's not naive enough to miss the subtle signals Vaughn gives off, but instead of retreating, she's pulled in, almost instinctively. Her inherited sense of adventure, undoubtedly from her mother, drives her to enter a domain she probably should have avoided. And that very recklessness is what captures Vaughn's attention, not just because Joss is brave and intelligent, but because she could be a crucial pawn in a larger, still unrevealed plan. The week of April 7th to 11th isn't just the beginning of a new adventure for Joss, it's a turning point that could come at a high price if she strays too far from safety. Vaughn is not just a mysterious charmer with a haunted past, he carries the weight of WSB's dark history, where missions often end in unexplained deaths. With Joss rumored to be embarking on her first mission involving the organization, the question isn't only whether she'll survive, but for how long she'll remain the same person. Meanwhile, Jack, Joss's stepfather and ever-watchful protector, may be the first to notice the change in her. His connection to Vaughn is unclear, but one thing is certain. Jack doesn't trust anyone tied to the WSB, especially not someone getting dangerously close to Joss. If Jack begins to investigate Vaughn, he might uncover the secrets Joss is hiding, not only about her mission, but also about the budding emotional connection she's not yet ready to confront. Against this backdrop, Port Charles becomes a chessboard, pieces slowly repositioning. Vaughn is the unexpected knight, Joss the unsuspecting pawn, and those around them, Carly, Dex, Spencer, may soon be pulled into a chain of events that can no longer be stopped. Beneath the town's quiet exterior lies the undercurrent of the WSB, of unchecked emotions, and of choices that could alter the fate of not just one person, but an entire generation. And then, as the hospital corridor lights fade into the late-night silence, Vaughn watches from the shadows, his eyes fixed on Joss with a gaze that is equal parts curious and dangerous. No one knows whether he's protecting her, or just waiting for the right moment to use what she has. But one thing is certain, the WSB play is far from over, and Joss will never be the same again. Stay tuned for the next chapters of General Hospital, where new arrivals and long-awaited returns promise to reshape Port Charles in ways no one could have predicted. As the drama intensifies, the landscape of familiar relationships, alliances, and rivalries is set to shift, making room for explosive secrets, shocking revelations, and heartbreaking betrayals. Every new face that walks into town carries a past, and in Port Charles, the past has a way of refusing to stay buried. Whispers are already circulating about characters long thought to be gone making their way back, some with unfinished business, others with scores to settle. The return of familiar figures like Kim Nero could reignite stories that once left audiences in tears. Her reappearance alone holds the potential to unravel Drew Kane's carefully constructed image and spark conflict with every corner of his life, from Willow and Michael to Josslyn and Carly. But she's not the only one whose presence could send shockwaves through the community. There are murmurs that another legacy character may be reintroduced in an entirely new context. A person who disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances, possibly returning under an alias or even as part of a covert WSB operation. With the WSB story arc heating up and Vaughn's presence growing more ominous by the day, the possibility that Port Charles is becoming a ground zero for something much larger than anyone anticipated cannot be ignored. Josslyn, now on the edge of a new chapter in her life, may find herself entangled in a web of international espionage, heartbreak, and betrayal, perhaps even discovering that someone close to her isn't who they say they are. Meanwhile, as secrets bubble beneath the surface of high society and hospital hallways, expect new families to emerge, ones with hidden ties to the Quartermaines, the Corinthos clan, and the Ashfords. These new characters won't just serve as background, they'll bring with them dangerous knowledge, old vendettas, and emotional stakes that could threaten everything the current generation holds dear. Sons and daughters separated at birth, long-lost siblings, and children born from past affairs are all storylines that could resurface, rewriting the legacies of even the most powerful names in town. Romance will also take center stage, but not in the way fans might expect. Look for love triangles that pit loyalty against passion, former flames reigniting old sparks, and shocking new pairings that test the limits of forgiveness. One steamy affair might lead to a devastating scandal, threatening careers, marriages, and reputations. Another might give birth to a surprising alliance that no one in town saw coming, especially not those who stand to lose the most. As the corridors of General Hospital echo with secrets and the streets of Port Charles grow darker, trust will become a rare currency. Who will rise? Who will fall? And which familiar face will be next to walk through the doors, forever changing the course of the story? The stage is set, the pieces are in motion, and every heartbeat in Port Charles now carries the weight of what's to come. Watch closely. Every glance, every whisper, and every return might be the one that ignites the next firestorm. Because in General Hospital, no one arrives without a reason, and no one leaves without consequences.